The reclaimer drifted through space like a misshapen tumor against the backdrop of stars. Its hull, if one could call it that, consisted of salvaged panels from at least 20 different spacecraft, shipping containers repurposed as crew quarters, and what appeared to be actual garbage compacted into structural supports. Various antennas, dishes, and unidentifiable protrusions stuck out at odd angles, giving the impression of a hedgehog having a particularly bad hair day. Captain Jack Reynolds stood on the bridge, which had once been the cabin of a luxury yacht before it was torn out wholesale and grafted onto the front of his vessel. He scratched his beard as the communications officer, Benny, frantically worked the controls. "They're hailing us again, Captain," Benny said, not bothering to hide his nervousness. "The Galactic Council representatives sound concerned." Jack grinned. "Put them through. And make sure the external cameras are working this time. I want them to see every beautiful inch of my ship." The main screen flickered to life, revealing 3 aliens seated behind an elegant curved desk. In the center sat Ambassador Kroll, a tall being with blue-tinted skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. The ambassador's upper eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of distress in their species. "Human vessel," Kroll began, voice trained with diplomacy. "We must inquire about the structural integrity of your craft. Our scans indicate numerous potential failures throughout your hull. Is this truly the vessel your species has chosen to represent Earth at this historic first contact?" Jack leaned forward, planting his hands on the console. "Ambassador Kroll, the reclaimer isn't just a ship. She's a statement." "A statement of what, precisely?" asked the reptilian alien to Kroll's right, not bothering to hide the contempt in their voice. "That humans don't waste," Jack replied. "Every piece of my ship was destined for the scrap heap or floating forever as space junk. We took what others discarded and built something that works." The third alien, a gelatinous entity contained in a hovering environmental suit, rippled in what appeared to be disgust. "But the aesthetics alone don't mean a damn thing in the vacuum of space," Jack interrupted. "With all due respect, function beats form out here." As if to contradict his statement, a loud clang echoed through the bridge, followed by the hiss of escaping air. None of the crew looked particularly concerned. "Just the port recycling module adjusting itself," Jack explained with a casual wave. "Self-correcting system." The reptilian alien leaned toward Kroll. "They're all going to die," it whispered, not realizing the microphone would pick it up. Jack laughed. "That's what the Earth Space Authority said 3 years ago. Yet here we are, having traveled farther than any official human vessel." Benny passed Jack a tablet showing the Council ship's scan attempts. Jack nodded approvingly. "I notice your sensors are having trouble getting accurate readings of our systems," Jack said. "That's intentional. The random arrangement of materials creates a natural stealth profile. Your military vessels would pay good money for that capability." Kroll's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of interest. "You claim this hodgepodge was designed with strategic advantages in mind." "Every seeming flaw has a purpose," Jack confirmed. "Those garbage compaction blocks. Radiation shielding that outperforms standard materials at 1/10 the cost. The mismatched hull panels. They create unpredictable heat dispersion patterns that make us nearly invisible to thermal tracking." The gelatinous alien rippled again, this time in what might have been grudging admiration. Jack pressed his advantage. "We're scheduled to dock with your station in 6 hours. I suggest you prepare your engineers. They'll want to study us, and my crew is prepared to give them the full tour." "Is that safe?" the reptilian alien asked. "Safer than those fancy military vessels you're used to," Jack replied. "Those ships are designed to look impressive while flying in formation. Ours is designed to survive when everything goes wrong." As if on cue, another clang sounded, followed by the lights flickering briefly. "Normal operations," Jack said with a straight face. After the transmission ended, his first officer Mike approached. "You know they think we're complete idiots, right?" Jack's smile widened. "Perfect. The more they underestimate us, the better. When they realize that this ugly bucket of bolts has mapped more uncharted regions than their entire fleet combined, they'll start asking the right questions. And what questions are those? Mike asked. Why their beautiful ships can't do what our ugly one can, Jack replied, patting the mismatched control panel affectionately. Sometimes the dumbest-looking solution is the smartest one available. The Reclaimer continued its awkward journey toward the Galactic Council station, belching occasional puffs of vented gas and making sounds no proper spacecraft should make. But it moved with purpose, carrying its crew of innovators to humanity's first official meeting with galactic civilization. And if the Council representatives' expressions were anything to go by, it was going to be a meeting they would never forget. The caffeine dream hummed as it drifted through the asteroid belt, though hummed wasn't quite the right word. The noise it made resembled someone vigorously stirring coffee with a metal spoon while simultaneously grinding beans and steaming milk. The distinctive smell of fresh coffee permeated every inch of the unusual vessel. Engineer Tom Miller stood in what should have been the engine room, but looked more like an industrial-sized coffee shop. Massive tanks of coffee grounds lined the walls. Pipes snaked everywhere, carrying various stages of coffee from freshly brewed to spent grounds. The heart of the system was a series of reactors that broke down caffeine molecules and harnessed their energy in ways that defied conventional physics. "How's our fuel level?" Tom asked his assistant, Pete, who was monitoring a panel that displayed coffee bean reserves instead of traditional fuel gauges. "We're at 63% capacity," Pete replied, tapping a dial that wobbled between perky and jittery instead of the standard fuel readings. "But we're burning through the Colombian blend faster than expected. The synthetic caffeine enhancers are working too well." Tom nodded, taking a sip from his mug, his 14th of the day. His hands trembled slightly. Every crew member aboard the Caffeine Dream exhibited similar symptoms: slightly bloodshot eyes, constant movement, and the ability to speak at speeds that sometimes required recordings to be played back at half speed to be understood. The intercom crackled. "Engine room." Captain Donna's voice came through, speaking rapidly. "We've got visitors. Looks like a Galactic Council inspection vessel. They're requesting permission to board. Something about investigating reports of an impossible propulsion system. Get things looking presentable." "Copy that," Tom replied, glancing around at the bubbling vats and hissing pipes, though I'm not sure what presentable means in this context. 30 minutes later, a delegation of 3 aliens stood in the engine room, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and horror. The tallest one, who had introduced himself as Inspector Vrek, held up a scanning device that kept beeping and displaying error messages. "This cannot be correct," Vrek said, tapping the device. "According to our readings, you're powering a starship with a beverage." Tom grinned, bouncing slightly on his toes. "Not just any beverage. Coffee. The most perfect substance in the universe. We've modified the molecular structure of caffeine to create a cascading energy reaction that powers everything from life support to our main thrusters." The second alien, a shorter being with pale green skin, sniffed the air and winced. "The entire ship reeks of this coffee." "That's a feature, not a bug," Tom explained. "The aromatic compounds help seal microscopic hull breaches. Plus, studies show the smell improves crew alertness by 17%. Your crew appears to be suffering from severe stimulant overdose," noted the third alien, who wore what looked like a medical scanner around their neck. Pete laughed, the sound coming out as a high-pitched giggle. "Nah, we're just properly caffeinated. Wait until you see what happens when we hit the hyperdrive." Inspector Vrek raised what passed for an eyebrow. "You have a hyperdrive powered by this substance. We call it the Espresso Express," Tom said proudly, leading them to a sealed chamber where an enormous pressure vessel stood. "When we need a burst of speed, we create the universe's most concentrated shot of espresso under extreme pressure. The resulting energy spike lets us briefly jump to faster-than-light speeds." The aliens exchanged concerned glances. "This is madness," Vrek declared. "The variations in energy output alone should tear your ship apart, not to mention the biological effects on your crew." As if to demonstrate, a technician nearby suddenly stood up, rattled off a complex mathematical equation, scribbled it on a whiteboard, solved a problem that had been bothering the engineering team for weeks, and then promptly fell asleep face down on a console. "We call that a caffeine crash," Tom explained casually. "She'll be back up in 20 minutes after someone pours coffee into her emergency intake valve." "Emergency intake valve?" the medical alien asked. Tom pointed to what was clearly a special mug with a straw position near the sleeping technician's mouth. Before the inspection could continue, alarms blared throughout the ship. The intercom crackled again with Captain Donna's voice. "Attention all hands. Unidentified vessels approaching. Hostile intent detected. Battle stations." The aliens looked alarmed, but Tom merely grinned and pressed a large red button labeled Brewing Emergency. The entire ship shuddered as the coffee systems kicked into overdrive. The normal hum rose to a frantic bubbling roar. "You might want to hold onto something," Tom advised the inspectors as he grabbed a nearby railing. "And you might want to have some coffee. Things are about to get jittery." The pursuing ships, sleek, dangerous-looking vessels, closed in rapidly, their weapons charging. But as they locked targeting systems on the Caffeine Dream, their sensors suddenly went haywire. "The beauty of our ship," Tom explained as warning lights flashed and the deck vibrated beneath them, "is that the caffeine emissions scramble targeting systems. Can't hit what you can't lock onto." The aliens watched in astonishment as the seemingly ridiculous coffee ship executed a series of maneuvers that should have been impossible, leaving its pursuers confused and firing at empty space. "It's not elegant," Tom admitted, sipping calmly from his mug, while everyone around him worked at triple speed. "But it keeps us alive. In space, sometimes the dumbest solution is the one that works." As the Caffeine Dream zoomed away, leaving its baffled attackers behind, Inspector Vrek reluctantly made a note in his report. "While aesthetically absurd and medically questionable, the human caffeine vessel demonstrates unexpected tactical advantages. Further study recommended." From a safe distance, the rubber ducky didn't look like a proper spaceship at all. From the outside, it resembled a giant sphere with small portholes dotting its surface. The hull gleamed with a peculiar waterproof coating that gave it a slight yellow tint, hence the nickname that had stuck despite the official designation of Aquatic Gravitational Environment Vessel. Dr. Lisa Parker floated through the central hub of her creation, her movements slow and deliberate in the water that filled every compartment. She wore a sleek diving suit with an enhanced breathing apparatus that recycled oxygen from the water itself. Around her, the crew moved with practiced ease, their bodies adapting to the strange environment they had all come to call home. "Status report," Lisa called out, her voice coming through clearly in the specialized communication system that worked through water. Her second-in-command, Marcus, swam over with a waterproof tablet. "All systems nominal. The rotation is maintaining perfect speed, and water pressure remains constant throughout all sections." Lisa nodded, watching the data scroll across the screen. The rubber ducky's most distinctive feature wasn't visible from the outside. The entire interior sphere rotated within the stable outer hull, causing the water inside to press against the outer walls. This created a form of artificial gravity through water pressure, allowing the crew to swim in any direction while still feeling a consistent sense of orientation. "Any word from the Galactic Council observers?" Lisa asked, glancing toward the special viewing chamber where 3 alien representatives had been stationed for the past week. Marcus grimaced. "They're still complaining about the moisture. Apparently, their species finds constant submersion distressing." "They don't have to stay submerged," Lisa pointed out. "The observation bubble is dry. They just have to watch through the windows." I believe their exact words were, "Watching humans swim like fish inside a floating bathtub is causing psychological damage," Marcus quoted with a small smile. Lisa was about to respond when the emergency lights began to pulse with a deep red glow. Water vibrated around them as the ship's alert system engaged. "Incoming transmission," called out the communications officer. "It's an automated distress signal from a Galactic Council vessel. They're under attack by raiders in Sector 7. Lisa immediately swam toward the command center, her body cutting efficiently through the water. "How far?" 3 minutes at full rotation," came the reply. "Spin it up," Lisa ordered, "and prepare the water cannons." The crew engaged the ship's unique propulsion system. Unlike conventional vessels that relied on external engines, the rubber ducky increased its internal rotation speed, creating a gyroscopic effect that propelled the sphere forward. The faster the interior sphere spun, the faster the ship moved through space. The alien observers clutched their restraints as the viewing chamber began to vibrate. Through the windows, they watched in horror as the human crew swam rapidly through what appeared to be increasingly turbulent water. "This is madness," hissed the tallest alien, a dignified representative from a desert world. "They're going to drown themselves before they even reach the battle." When the rubber ducky arrived at the scene, a sleek council ship was being bombarded by 2 raider vessels. Energy weapons flashed against failing shields. "They've spotted us," Marcus announced. "Raiders are turning to attack." The first blast hit the rubber ducky directly. Instead of the expected catastrophic breach, something unexpected happened. The water inside the sphere rippled dramatically, absorbing and dispersing the energy throughout the entire volume of liquid. "Just as we predicted," Lisa said with satisfaction. "Water is an excellent energy dissipator." The raiders, confused by the lack of damage, fired again with stronger weapons. Again, the rubber ducky simply absorbed the impact, the water inside churning but the structure remaining intact. "Deploy countermeasures," Lisa ordered. Special ports opened around the sphere's equator. The ship's rotation suddenly reversed direction, creating a momentary point of zero gravity at the center, while the water at the edges experienced extreme pressure. This pressure forced massive jets of water out through the ports, superheated and pressurized to the point of being lethal weapons. The raiders' ships, unprepared for such an unconventional attack, took direct hits from the water cannons. Their energy shields, designed to stop plasma and laser fire, did nothing against the simple kinetic force of pressurized water. Critical systems shorted out as water found its way into vulnerable components. From the observation bubble, the alien representatives watched in stunned silence as the ridiculous human bathtub disabled 2 advanced raider vessels using nothing but water. "Impossible," whispered one. "Their ship design defies all conventional logic." "And yet," replied another, "I believe we're witnessing the future of defensive vessel design." The rubber ducky completed its rescue mission, taking the damaged council ship under escort. Lisa Parker received an emergency transmission from Galactic headquarters. "Dr. Parker," came the formal voice, "the Council requests immediate technical specifications for your water-based defense system." Lisa smiled as she floated in the command center of her perfect bathtub spaceship. Sometimes the dumbest ideas turned out to be the most brilliant ones after all. The tilt moved through space in a way that made most observers feel motion sickness just by watching it. Instead of the smooth, predictable trajectories of normal spacecraft, it pinballed its way across the void, ricocheting off carefully calculated surfaces like a deranged billiard ball. Inside the spherical cockpit, pilot Mike Jones gripped the unusual control setup, a combination of joysticks, foot pedals, and what appeared to be actual pinball machine flippers. His eyes darted between multiple trajectory screens as he made tiny adjustments to the ship's next bounce. "You're coming in too hot on the next deflector," warned his navigator, Doug, who monitored a complex 3D map showing their planned path through the asteroid field. "Ease off 2 degrees, or you'll overshoot." Mike nodded, making a minute adjustment to their approach angle. The tilt had no conventional engines, at least not in the traditional sense. Its revolutionary design used a series of mechanical spring-loaded impact plates that could extend from the hull. When the ship struck an object, These plates absorbed and redirected the kinetic energy, launching the vessel in a new direction. 3 seconds to impact. Doug counted down. 2, 1. The entire ship shuddered as it struck a small asteroid. Instead of catastrophic damage, the specialized hull plates compressed, storing the energy like a coiled spring, then released it in a controlled direction that sent the tilt hurtling toward its next calculated bounce point. Perfect, Mike exclaimed, his face lighting up with the same joy a pinball enthusiast might show after a particularly good shot. We just shaved 2 minutes off our transit time. The communications panel blinked as an incoming transmission arrived. "It's from the Galactic Council escort," Doug said with a sigh. "They're requesting, again, that we switch to conventional propulsion. Their navigator is apparently becoming physically ill trying to plot our course." Mike snorted. "Tell them we don't have conventional propulsion. This is it." The escort vessel had been assigned to monitor the tilt during its first official journey through Council space. The aliens had been horrified to discover that humans had deliberately designed a ship to crash into things. "Impact in 20 seconds, the computer announced in a cheerful voice. "Preparing bounce plate 7 for optimal energy transfer." The alien captain's face appeared on the screen, his expression a mixture of concern and exasperation. "Human vessel, our sensors indicate you are on a direct collision course with a metallic asteroid. Please engage evasive maneuvers immediately." "That's not a bug, it's a feature," Mike replied with a grin. "Just watch." The alien captain's multiple eyes widened in horror as the tilt deliberately slammed into the asteroid at a precise angle. The impact was followed by a strange musical tone as the energy transferred through the ship and launched it in an entirely new direction, directly through a narrow gap between 2 larger asteroids that conventional ships would have needed to navigate around. "How are you not dead?" the alien captain demanded, his voice rising to a higher pitch. Mike shrugged. "Inertial dampeners, very good ones. Plus, the entire crew compartment is mounted on a gimbal system that rotates to keep us oriented regardless of which direction the hull is bouncing." The alien made a sound that their translator didn't bother to interpret. "Look," Mike continued, "I know it seems crazy, but there's method to our madness. We use 78% less fuel than conventional ships because we harness the natural kinetic energy all around us. In dense fields like this, we can travel indefinitely without using a drop of reactor power for propulsion." Before the alien could respond, warning alarms blared throughout the ship. Doug's fingers flew across his console. "Mike, we've got trouble. Scanner shows 3 pirate vessels entering the field. They're moving to cut off the Council escort." The alien captain's face showed renewed panic. "Our vessel is not designed for combat in asteroid fields. We must retreat to open space." Mike's expression turned serious as he studied the tactical display. "That's exactly what they want. They'll pick you off in open space." He turned to Doug. "Calculate me a combat bounce sequence." "A what?" the alien captain asked. "You might want to hold on to something," Mike suggested as he began programming a series of seemingly impossible trajectories. What followed defied conventional space combat tactics entirely. The tilt transformed from an odd but controlled vessel into what appeared to be a wildly ricocheting projectile. It bounced from asteroid to asteroid at increasing speeds, its path utterly unpredictable to any targeting computer. The pirate vessels, unable to lock weapons on the erratic target, found themselves focusing on the more predictable Council ship. That was their mistake. Mike used their distraction to line up the perfect shot, a series of rapid bounces that sent the tilt slamming directly into the lead pirate vessel, using its own hull as a weapon. The pirate ship spun out of control from the impact, crashing into one of its companions. The third pirate, witnessing the bizarre attack, quickly retreated. When the chaos subsided, the alien captain stared at Mike through the view screen, mandibles twitching in what might have been reluctant admiration. "Your ship," the captain said slowly, "is the dumbest design I have ever encountered." Mike grinned as he plotted their next bounce. Sometimes the dumbest ideas are the hardest to beat. The Frankenship looked like it had been assembled by a child with mismatched building blocks. Its hull comprised visible sections from at least 12 different alien vessels, each with distinct architecture, materials, and design philosophies. Some parts gleamed with the polished metal favored by the Arcturians, while others displayed the crystalline transparency of Novan construction. Lumpy organic sections from brogue ships grew alongside geometric plex components, creating a visual cacophony that offended aesthetic sensibilities across the galaxy. Commander Anna Wilson stood on the bridge, which itself was a bizarre hybrid of technologies. Her captain's chair had been salvaged from a luxury Centauri cruiser, while the navigation console came from a Drav warship. The life support systems had been cobbled together from parts of a Molosian medical frigate and a Targan pleasure yacht. Nothing matched, and yet somehow everything worked. "Status report," Anna called out, tapping a control panel that featured both holographic interfaces and physical buttons side by side. Her chief engineer, Russ, looked up from a console that was literally held together with duct tape and hope. "We've got green lights across all systems, Commander. Well, green on the systems that use green for good. Purple on the Halix systems, vibrating tentacles on the Broad biocircuits, and the Zent computer is emitting a pleasant odor, which means it's happy." Anna nodded, having long since grown accustomed to the ship's eccentricities. "And our guests?" "The engineering delegation is in Cargo Bay 3, her first officer, Tina, reported with a grimace. "They've been screaming in 6 different languages for the past hour." Anna sighed. The Galactic Council had sent their top engineers to inspect the Frankenship, insisting that such a cobbled-together vessel couldn't possibly be safe. What had begun as a routine inspection had quickly devolved into collective alien hysteria. "I'd better go talk to them," Anna said, rising from her chair. "Tina, you have the bridge. Try not to press the yellow button on the left console. We still don't know what it does." Anna made her way through corridors that changed architectural styles every few meters. In some sections, the ceiling soared to accommodate tall species. In others, she had to duck. The gravity shifted subtly between sections, and the lighting ranged from harsh and clinical to soft and ambient depending on which alien technology controlled that particular area. When she entered Cargo Bay 3, she found 6 alien engineers in various states of distress. The tall, insectoid Halix engineer was frantically waving scanning devices at a wall where Drav power conduits fed directly into Centauri energy matrices, a combination that every textbook said would cause an immediate catastrophic explosion. Commander Wilson. The Halix chittered, compound eyes blinking rapidly. "This ship is an abomination. These systems cannot work together. It defies all engineering principles." Anna leaned against a support beam that had clearly been repurposed from a Plex mining vessel. "And yet, here we are, 3 years into our mission, without a single critical system failure." A gelatinous Molosian engineer oozed forward, its translator emitting stressed beats. "The navigation system is routing commands through 7 different incompatible protocols. The universal translator is simultaneously processing 16 language matrices that should corrupt each other. Your life support is balanced between technologies that operate on opposing principles. We call it adaptive integration," Anna explained calmly. "Instead of forcing systems to be compatible, we embrace their differences and create interface layers that allow them to communicate." The Centauri engineer, a humanoid with metallic skin, stepped forward holding up a tablet displaying ship schematics. "Look at this. You've connected a Brobe organic power cell directly to a Zent crystalline matrix. The energy signatures alone should cause immediate system rejection." Anna smiled. "We discovered that if you add a buffer of Earth copper wiring wrapped in a specific pattern, it actually creates a harmonic resonance that enhances both systems." Before the engineers could respond, the ship's alert system activated, a strange combination of flashing lights, alarm tones, and what sounded suspiciously like an old Earth ice cream truck jingle. "What is happening?" demanded the Halix engineer. Anna checked her communicator. We're picking up a distress signal. A Council research vessel is under attack by quantum pirates. The alien engineers exchanged horrified glances as Anna calmly activated the ship-wide communication system. All hands to battle stations. Prepare for emergency jump. Jump, the Centauri engineer exclaimed. This ship has 12 different partial FTL systems. None of them are compatible. You can't possibly. The rest of the protest was lost as the Frankenship shuddered, its mismatched hull plates grinding against each other as 12 different propulsion technologies activated simultaneously. The impossible vessel leaped into FTL space through a wormhole that, according to every known law of physics, should not have existed. When they emerged near the besieged research vessel, the pirate ships paused their attack, clearly confused by the approaching monstrosity. "They're scanning us," Tina reported over the comm. "And they seem confused." Anna grinned as she returned to the bridge. "Of course they are. Every scan will show different results depending on which part of our hull they hit. Deploy the Hallex shields on the port side and the probe membranes to starboard." As the Frankenship moved to intercept, the pirates found themselves unable to get a target lock on the vessel that presented itself as 12 different ship types simultaneously. Sometimes, Anna told the still horrified engineering delegation who had followed her to the bridge, "The dumbest ship is the smartest tactical advantage you can have." The Elastic Fantastic looked less like a spaceship and more like a giant metal spider caught in its own web. Massive tension cables stretched in all directions from its central hull, connecting to a network of anchoring nodes that floated freely in space. These cables, made from a specialized carbon-titanium alloy, could extend and retract with astonishing force. Veteran pilot Dave Martin sat in the unusually reinforced cockpit, his body secured by multiple safety harnesses and impact cushioning. Even after 20 years of conventional flying, nothing had prepared him for piloting humanity's strangest vessel. He checked the tension readouts on the main display, each cable's stress levels carefully monitored. "Pre-launch checklist complete," announced his co-pilot, Frank, who looked slightly green despite the special anti-nausea medication all crew members took before launches. "Primary cables at optimal tension. Anchor nodes positioned according to flight plan." Dave nodded, pulling up the 3D trajectory map. "Calculate final vector for Council headquarters. We need to make a good impression." The Galactic Council had finally agreed to observe a demonstration of the Elastic Fantastic, though most alien species remained convinced that humans were playing an elaborate practical joke. No spacefaring civilization would seriously use giant rubber bands to propel vessels through space, except humans, apparently. "Tension values locked in," Frank confirmed. "Catapult sequence ready on your mark." Dave toggled the ship-wide communication system. "All hands, secure for launch." This is not a drill. I repeat, secure for launch. Throughout the vessel, crew members secured themselves in specially designed chairs that could absorb extreme G-forces. The ship's unique propulsion system eliminated the need for conventional engines, but subjected the crew to forces that would kill most beings without proper protection. "Launch in 3, 2, 1. Release," Dave commanded. The primary tension cables, which had been slowly pulling the ship back like a slingshot, suddenly released. The Elastic Fantastic shot forward with explosive acceleration, the G-force pushing Dave and Frank deep into their chairs despite the inertial dampeners working overtime. "First stage acceleration complete," Frank called out, his voice strained. "Preparing secondary bounce in 10 seconds." The ship hurtled toward one of the larger anchor nodes floating ahead. Just before collision, the node activated its own cable system, catching the speeding vessel and using its momentum to redirect it like a tetherball around a pole. The Elastic Fantastic whipped around the node and shot off in a new direction, picking up even more speed. "Secondary bounce successful," Dave announced, checking the systems, velocity increasing to planned levels. "Prepare for sequential redirection." What followed was a carefully choreographed ballet of physics and momentum. The ship bounced from node to node, each redirect adding to its velocity without using a drop of conventional fuel. The network of anchor nodes, which had been previously positioned along their route, served as waypoints in this elaborate game of spatial pinball. The ship's communication system crackled as a transmission came through from the Galactic Council observation vessel that struggled to keep pace with the unconventional flight pattern. "Human vessel," came the confused voice of the Council representative. "Our tracking systems cannot make sense of your trajectory. Are you experiencing propulsion malfunction?" Dave grinned despite the G-forces pulling at his face. "Negative, Council vessel. This is standard operating procedure for the Elastic Fantastic. We're using gravitational slingshot principles enhanced by our tension cable technology." There was a long pause before the response came. "Your crew is subjected to forces that would kill most species. Our medical officer is concerned. The human body is remarkably adaptable," Dave replied as the ship approached another node for its most dramatic maneuver yet. "You might want to back off for this next part. We call it the rubber band snap." Before the Council vessel could respond, the Elastic Fantastic engaged with a specialized node that had 4 separate cable systems. These cables caught the speeding ship simultaneously, stretching to absorb its momentum before contracting with incredible force, launching the vessel forward like a stone from a sling. Alarms suddenly blared throughout the cockpit. "Proximity alert," Frank shouted. "Unidentified vessels entering the flight path. Trajectory interference." Dave's eyes narrowed as he assessed the tactical display. 3 unmarked ships had appeared directly in their path, positioned to intercept the Council observation vessel once it followed the expected route. "Pirates," Dave muttered. They were waiting to ambush the Council ship. The pirates hadn't counted on the Elastic Fantastic's unique capabilities. Dave's hands flew across the controls, recalculating tension values and bounce vectors. "New course," he announced. "We're going to use the yo-yo defense." Frank's eyes widened. That maneuver hasn't been tested outside simulation. "No time like the present," Dave replied, already activating the emergency cable deployments. The Elastic Fantastic suddenly shot out new tension cables, latching onto nearby space debris. Using these impromptu anchor points, the ship executed a series of rapid direction changes that no conventional vessel could match. The pirate ships, attempting to track and target the human vessel, found themselves hopelessly confused by its erratic movement pattern. The Council observation vessel transmitted again, this time with a tone of bewildered respect. "Human vessel, your navigation defies all known principles of spaceflight. The pirate vessels are retreating, apparently unable to establish targeting solutions." Dave allowed himself a small smile as the Elastic Fantastic completed its demonstration, bouncing one final time to position itself protectively beside the Council ship. "Sometimes," he transmitted back, "the dumbest way to fly is the hardest to fight against." The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Federation stretched across an asteroid that had been hollowed out and transformed into the most impressive meeting place in known space. 5,000 representatives from across the galaxy sat in tiered seats surrounding a central speaking platform. Today, that platform held a single human, Ambassador Helen Reed, who stood calmly despite being the focus of 10,000 alien eyes. High Counselor Zex Troll, a tall being with iridescent scales and 6 limbs, tapped a ceremonial staff against the floor to bring the chamber to order. The resulting silence was heavy with anticipation. "We have gathered," Zex Troll announced, his voice amplified throughout the chamber, "to vote on humanity's petition to join the Galactic Federation. The inspection period has concluded. Our representatives have examined the 6 human vessels that were submitted as examples of their spacefaring technology." Murmurs rippled through the assembled delegates. Many had personally witnessed or reviewed footage of the bizarre human ships. The Reclaimer, cobbled together from literal garbage. The Caffeine Dream, powered by a beverage. The Rubber Ducky, filled with water. The Tilt, which deliberately crashed into things. The Frankenship, an impossible mix of technologies. The elastic fantastic, propelled by giant space rubber bands. Before we proceed to the vote, Zextroll continued, the Engineering Council will present their final assessment. Chief Engineer Kralvon floated to the platform on a gravity disk, carrying a data tablet. The venerable alien had personally inspected each human vessel and had been in a state of perpetual outrage for weeks. Esteemed colleagues, Kralvon began, his voice quivering with barely contained emotion. In my 300 years as chief engineer, I have never encountered such a collection of absurd, impractical, and fundamentally unsound vessels as those presented by humanity. Ambassador Helen maintained her diplomatic smile, though her shoulders tensed slightly. The human ships violate 67 fundamental principles of spacefaring design, Kralvon continued, warming to his subject. They ignore safety protocols that every other species considers essential. They combine technologies that should not function together. They deliberately incorporate inefficiencies that any reasonable engineer would eliminate. The chamber grew louder as delegates turned to their neighbors, discussing these damning observations. And yet, Kralvon's voice cut through the noise, instantly silencing the room. And yet, they work. A confused silence followed this statement. Not only do they work, Kralvon admitted, sounding personally offended by this fact, but in several critical areas, they outperform our standard designs. The Reclaimer's adaptive hull has superior radiation protection. The Caffeine Dream's emissions confound our best targeting systems. The Rubber Ducky's water-filled design absorbs energy weapons with unprecedented efficiency. The Tilt's bouncing propulsion makes it nearly impossible to intercept. The Frankenship's hybrid systems resist all known forms of electronic warfare. And the Elastic Fantastic's cable propulsion uses 97% less fuel than our most efficient engines. Ambassador Helen's smile widened slightly. In conclusion, Kralvon finished reluctantly. While I personally find human engineering philosophy deeply disturbing, I must acknowledge its effectiveness. The Engineering Council recommends acceptance of human technology as meeting Federation standards, albeit through extremely unconventional means. Before the vote could proceed, emergency alarms blared throughout the chamber. Councillor Zextroll received an urgent communication, his scales paling as he listened. The chamber is under attack, he announced, triggering immediate panic. A fleet of stealth vessels has bypassed our outer defenses and the entire asteroid shuddered as the first volley of weapons fire struck the shields. Impossible, shouted the defense minister. Our shields are impenetrable. Not to phase-shifted quantum torpedoes, countered the security chief. The Drechthen rebels have acquired weapons beyond our defensive capabilities. As chaos erupted, Ambassador Helen activated her communication device. This is read to all human vessels. Emergency Protocol Epsilon. I repeat, Emergency Protocol Epsilon. Outside the asteroid, in the void of space, 6 improbable human ships moved into formation. Though they had been held at a considerable distance from the Council asteroid as a safety precaution, they now proved to be in the perfect position to intercept the attacking fleet. Inside the Council chamber, view screens activated to show the unfolding battle. Delegates gasped as they witnessed the human vessels working in perfect, if bizarre, coordination. The Reclaimer absorbed enemy fire with its patchwork hull, identifying the frequency of the advanced weapons and transmitting that data to the other ships. The Caffeine Dream pulsed with energy that scrambled the attackers' targeting systems. The Rubber Ducky projected jets of superheated water that short-circuited shield generators. The Tilt bounced between enemy vessels, creating confusion and disrupting their formation. The Frankenship deployed countermeasures from a dozen different technological traditions, overwhelming the attackers' defensive systems. And the Elastic Fantastic used its cables to literally bind 2 enemy ships together, causing them to collide. Within minutes, the attack had been repelled without a single casualty on either side. The enemy vessels retreated, most of them disabled rather than destroyed. When communications were restored, the Council chamber had fallen completely silent. Every delegate stared at Ambassador Helen, who stood calmly on the platform. High Counselor Zex Troll finally broke the silence. "It appears," he said slowly, "that we have been judging human technology by the wrong standards. It is not elegant, efficient, or conventional, but it is extraordinarily effective." He turned to the assembled delegates. "I call for an immediate vote on humanity's admission to the Federation." The result was unanimous. As Ambassador Helen later explained to the Council, sometimes the dumbest solution is the smartest choice. That's humanity's greatest strength. We don't care how silly something looks if it gets the job done.